I never thought I'd tell a story like this. I'm a normal guy from Columbus, Ohio. My name is Evan Cruz. I don't write. This is just what happened to me and my friends. It was a regular Wednesday at Lincoln High, gym after lunch. We were doing dumb stuff. Jose tripped and swore. The gym smelled like old sneakers and the cafeteria pizza. My phone was almost dead because I forgot to charge it. Little things. Announcements came over the PA. "Lock down," Ms. Hale said. "Everyone to the corner." She was calm, but her hands trembled. We squeezed into the corner by the bleachers. The main doors were on the far side. There was an emergency exit at the back that led to a hallway nobody used. Drama kids used it sometimes. Janitors used it sometimes. That's it. We sat on the cold floor. People whispered. Leah chewed gum loud. Her bra strap kept slipping and she kept fixing it. The clock moved slow. Halfway through, we heard the back door. A soft creak, not a bang. Miss Hale froze. She put a finger to her lips and crawled to the middle door with the small glass pane. She knelt, looked in, then looked at us. Her face went white. She backed up and mouthed, "Don't make a sound." She slid back to us slowly. Through the glass in the hallway, a man stood perfectly still. No weapon. Dark jacket, jeans. Too hot for that jacket, but he wore it like nothing. He didn't blink. He just stared at the gym doors. At first I thought maybe he was lost. Then he lifted one hand. Slow, like he had practiced it. He waved. No smile, just a slow wave. Nobody spoke. My phone had no bars. Jose whispered, "Call 911. We tried, but the building ate the signal. Ms. Hale put her hand on the floor and breathed like she was counting. Fear makes you do stupid things. We stayed silent. Later, police showed us camera footage. They said he'd been standing there for 21 minutes before he walked away. The tape shows him look at the camera, then stroll off calm. The police said the back door had been locked earlier. They wouldn't say how he got in. They kept saying, "We couldn't confirm." That felt like a closed door. After, people made guesses, a prank, a homeless man. The school said the building was secure. Miss Hale cried once in the hallway. She rubbed her thumb on her wrist like it calmed her. Little habits everyone notices later. We all went home. My dad drove me. The radio played a dumb song. At home, Milo, my cat, knocked over a cup when I sat down. I made ramen because I didn't want to cook. Normal things to prove I was fine. The strange part was after. Walking past the gym felt heavy. The school added cameras and locks. They showed us the footage in class, but the principal cut the clip right after the wave. He said it was privacy. Nobody explained why a guy would stand and wave at a locked gym full of kids. I think about that wave. It wasn't a freak-out wave. It wasn't panic. It was slow and casual, like someone saying hello from across the street. It made no sense. Ms. Hale quit a month later and moved to Dayton. Jose transferred. Leah skipped gym. I go back sometimes. I tell people the story because talking helps. People nod and go on with their day. They text me days later. "You okay?" I say, "Yeah." Sometimes at night I lie awake and replay the glass and the hand. I imagine the man in that hallway. He didn't hurt us. He didn't break in. He didn't say a single word. He just stood and watched, then left like he had somewhere to be. The police never named him. They never answered how he came in. They didn't tell us why he waved. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was someone who lost their mind for 21 minutes. Maybe it's someone who liked watching. I don't know. I don't want to imagine a monster. I just know what I saw. If you ever are in a lockdown and hear a slow creak in a hallway you think is closed, don't look through the glass. Don't even whisper. Move away if you can. I still get flashes walking past that hallway. Little things trigger it. the squeak of a door, a jacket too big for the weather, the smell of old pizza. I still remember small, useless things. Lyle, the janitor, had a radio that played old country. He walked halls slower after that day. Principal Landers avoided my eyes when I asked. At lunch, we joked about prank videos. Then someone went quiet. Once I checked the back hallway at night when I couldn't sleep. I turned, felt stupid, but I kept looking anyway. A dog barked outside while I stared at it. But sometimes I feel like he is still there in that hallway in the back, standing in a jacket, lifting his hand, saying hello with no face. Motherfucker. I'm not really the type of person who tells stories like this, but it's been stuck in my head for over 2 years now, and sometimes it's all I think about when I'm alone. This happened when I was in 11th grade at Franklin High in Sacramento. It was a Thursday. I remember because Thursday was the only day I had last period in the library instead of an actual classroom. We were supposed to be working on some dumb history project. It was about 2:20 p.m., almost the end of the day, when the intercom came on. Usually, it's just the same calm lady's voice. But this time, it was the principal, and his voice sounded tight, like he was talking fast but trying not to. He just said, "Lock down. This is not a drill." That was it. I think my brain froze for a second because it didn't really click. But everyone else in the library moved fast. Lights off, blinds down, and we all went behind the tall shelves. The librarian, Mrs. Alvarez, locked both doors. The library has 2 doors, one on each end, and both have those big glass panels you can see right through. I remember crouching next to this kid named Reese. He was breathing so hard I could hear it over the AC. Someone's phone buzzed, and Mrs. Alvarez whispered for us to turn them all on silent. The first 10 minutes were dead quiet. No noises in the hallway, nothing. I actually started thinking maybe it was just some crazy false alarm. But then we heard it. Footsteps. Slow ones. Not like sneakers squeaking, heavier, like work boots. And there was this dragging sound after every other step. The hallway floors are tile, so every sound kind of echoes. The footsteps got closer. Then they stopped. Right outside our door. Nobody moved. I could see the glass panel from where I was crouched, but it was too dark to see an actual face or anything. The door handle turned. Not fast. Slow, like someone was doing it on purpose so we'd hear it. It rattled a little. Then it stopped. And for maybe 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then we heard paper sliding under the door. Mrs. Alvarez was closest, and she picked it up. In the dark, I could see her squint at it. It wasn't normal paper. It was one of those overdue book slips the library prints when you don't return something. But on it, in thick black marker, someone had drawn this huge smiley face, not a neat one, like a messy, shaky circle with dots for eyes. Nobody said a word. We waited to hear the footsteps leave, but they didn't. We didn't hear anything. Not walking away, not moving, nothing. Just silence. After maybe 3 minutes, Mrs. Alvarez whispered that we needed to stay put. My legs were starting to go numb from crouching. I looked at Reese and he just shook his head like, "Don't." The weirdest part is when lockdown finally ended, about 40 minutes later, they let us out one room at a time. When our turn came, there were 2 cops standing in the hallway. Mrs. Alvarez showed them the paper, and they kind of looked at each other, then asked her where she got it. She pointed at the door. One of them radioed something, and then they told us to just go home. I walked to the student lot with Reese. My car wouldn't start, so my dad had to come get me. When I got home, I noticed I'd been holding that stupid history project folder the whole time, even during the lockdown. I have no idea why. Later that night, Reese texted me saying he heard from his cousin, who's in the AV club, that security checked the hallway cameras. The cameras are right outside the library, and apparently they didn't see anybody there at the time we heard the footsteps, which doesn't make sense because we all heard them. The next day, there was no announcement about what happened, no explanation, but the library stayed closed for the rest of the week. About a month later, I had to go back in to return a book. Mrs. Alvarez was alone at the desk. I asked her if she ever found out what that paper was about. She just looked at me for a second like she was deciding something and said, "We're not supposed to talk about it." That's it. I didn't push her for more. But here's the thing. That overdue book slip, the one with the smiley face, I've seen that handwriting before. I couldn't remember where for weeks, and then it hit me. Back in freshman year, someone used to draw that same weird circle, smiley in Sharpie, on the bathroom stall near the gym. I remember because people thought it was some inside joke. When I went to check, the stall had been repainted. I'm not saying it's connected, but it's just weird. The rest of junior year went normal. I never saw or heard anything like that again. But even now, every time I walk past a tall glass door, I think about someone standing there, in the dark, just holding the handle. And that smiley face. Sometimes I wonder if they were already in the school before the lockdown started, or if they even left. I'm graduating this year, and I haven't been back in that library since. But I swear, and I don't care if it sounds crazy, if I ever hear footsteps dragging like that again, I'm fucking running the other way. I don't even know how to start this. I'm not a good storyteller or anything, but this happened when I was a junior at Southwood High in Columbus, Ohio. And yeah, it still freaks me out when I think about it. It was a Friday, middle of February. Cold as hell outside. Our history teacher, Mr. Ferris, was out sick that day, so we had this substitute lady named Ms. Daly. She seemed nice, but you could tell she wasn't used to high school kids. She kept calling us kiddos, which was kinda awkward. We were halfway through class when the lockdown alarm went off. You know that long, loud buzz? The kind that makes you stop whatever you're doing? Yeah, that one. At first, I thought it was just the drill we were supposed to have that week, so I didn't think much of it. Normally, our safe spot was the art room 2 doors down, but Ms. Daly must have misunderstood the map they gave her. She told us to follow her quick, no talking, and instead of heading toward the art room, she took us down the hall, through a side door I didn't even know opened, and then down these creaky concrete steps. That's when I realized she was leading us into the old basement. The basement had been closed for at least a year for renovations. Everybody joked that it was haunted or full of rats the size of small dogs. It was mostly just a bunch of locked storage rooms. My buddy Nick once told me the janitors didn't even like going down there. When we got to the bottom, it smelled like wet cardboard and old metal. She opened this heavy gray door. We all filed in, and then, bam, the door swung shut behind us. Loud, like someone shoved it. The click of the lock made everyone stop for a second. It was pitch black, like can't see your hand black. Ms. Daly whispered, "Everyone sit down against the wall. Stay quiet." You could hear shuffling as people tried to find spots. Someone knocked over a metal bucket or something. It rolled forever before stopping. 10 minutes passed, maybe more. You lose track in the dark. I remember my phone was at 8%, so I didn't want to turn the flashlight on. The only sound was the low hum of the air vent somewhere above us. Then, way off in the dark, we heard it. This faint clink, 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 like something metal hitting the floor and dragging. At first I thought it was one of those pipes expanding or whatever, but it got louder, closer. Nick whispered, "Is that part of the drill?" And before I could answer, Ms. Daly leaned toward us and said, really quietly, "Nobody's supposed to be down here." The way she said it made my stomach drop. The clinking got closer until it sounded like it was just a few feet away, somewhere behind the metal shelving that ran along the wall. Then it stopped. Everything went dead silent. I could hear my own breathing and someone sniffing in the dark. That's when we heard a man's voice. Calm, low. Stay down here until they're gone. Nobody moved. Nobody said a word. It wasn't like in movies where people scream or run. We just sat there frozen, like we thought if we didn't move, it wouldn't see us. I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. The worst part was not knowing where he was. The voice sounded close, but in the dark, it could have been right behind me or across the room. Ms. Daly didn't say anything. She just slowly reached for her phone, but I could see the glow for a second before she turned it back off. I think she was scared that whoever it was would notice. After maybe 2 minutes, though it felt like an hour, the sound of footsteps started moving away. Not fast, just slow, like whoever it was knew we weren't going anywhere. We sat there in silence until we heard another sound, this one from the door. A loud bang, then it swung open. Light flooded in, and 2 police officers stood there. One of them said, "We've been looking for you. Why are you down here?" We all kind of talked over each other, saying we were hiding for the lockdown. When we mentioned the man's voice, the officers looked at each other like they had no clue what we were talking about. One of them even said, "This basement's sealed off. No one has keys except maintenance." They walked us upstairs, and that's when we found out the lockdown was actually just a drill. A normal drill. I remember going home that day and just sitting in my room, trying to figure out what the hell happened. I even looked up if maybe sound could travel from another floor, but it didn't make sense. That voice was in the same room. I know it. The next Monday, I asked the janitor, Mr. Keene, about the basement. He told me all the locks down there are manual and that the door we were in can't close on its own. You have to pull it. I asked if maybe another teacher was in there during the drill, and he shook his head, said the basement was under construction for some old plumbing and nobody's allowed past the caution tape. I never went back down there. Sometimes I think about that voice, though, the way it said, "Stay down here until they're gone." Like, who did he think was they? The police? Us? I don't know. All I know is that every time we have a lockdown drill now, I make sure I'm nowhere near those basement steps. And if Ms. Daly still subs at our school, I haven't seen her since. I was in 11th grade when this happened. It was a Thursday, mid-November, in Dallas, Texas. I remember because it was freezing that morning and I forgot my hoodie. I was sitting in the back of the music room, which always smelled like old sheet music and dust. The piano keys made this squeaky sound if you pressed them too soft. I used to do that during boring class moments. It was around 10:40 a.m. when the intercom went off with that short beep. Then the principal's voice came on, but it was weirdly shaky. He said, "Attention staff, this is a lockdown. Lock all doors and move students away from windows." Everyone froze for like 2 seconds. Then our teacher, Mr. Hadley, rushed to the door and locked it. He told us to get low and stay quiet. Now the music room wasn't like a normal classroom. It had this tiny rectangular window high up on the wall, near the ceiling, facing the parking lot. You couldn't normally see much out of it unless you stood on something. The blinds were open though, and you could see a slice of the outside sky. We all sat down by the cabinets. My friend Kyle was next to me and he whispered something about maybe it was just a drill. Mr. Hadley glared at him and put his finger to his lips. We stayed like that for a while. The only noise was the hum from the ceiling fan. About 15 minutes in, I noticed something at that window. At first, it was just a shadow moving past, like maybe a bird. But then it came back. Someone was crouched there. I could see a man's face peeking down through the glass. It wasn't anyone from our school. He looked older, probably late 30s or 40s. His face was pale, almost gray, with patchy facial hair like he hadn't shaved in weeks. He didn't even try to hide that he was looking at us. His head was tilted, and his breath kept fogging up the glass in short, fast bursts. Kyle saw it too, and his eyes went huge. He tapped my arm, then pointed. Mr. Hadley noticed and slowly moved closer to the window, but he stayed crouched so he wouldn't be seen from outside. The man suddenly grinned, just a little. Then he pulled up a folded piece of paper and held it against the glass. The words were huge, written in thick, black marker. "Open the door now." No one moved. Mr. Hadley shook his head slowly and mouthed, "Don't move." I remember my legs feeling numb, not from fear, but because I'd been sitting cross-legged too long. Someone in the back whispered something like, "Is he a cop?" but got shushed right away. The man stayed there, not knocking, not yelling, just watching. I could see his eyes flicking from person to person, scanning the room. Every now and then he'd lean closer and breathe on the glass, like he wanted us to see it fog up. It felt like forever, but it couldn't have been more than a few minutes. Then, somewhere far off, I heard sirens. They started faint but got louder. That's when the guy's whole face changed. He pulled the paper down, glanced sideways toward the lot, then just dropped out of sight. We didn't move. Mr. Hadley kept us in that corner for what felt like another half hour. My foot fell asleep and my phone was buzzing in my pocket from my mom calling, but I didn't dare take it out. When the lockdown finally ended, we stayed in the room until a police officer came to talk to Mr. Hadley. They didn't tell us much, just that someone had been seen walking around the parking lot and we were going to be escorted out. As we filed past the window, I saw something that made me stop for a second. Right under that little glass panel, the paint on the wall was scratched up bad. Not just chipped, deep grooves like someone had been climbing up there more than once. Some scratches were fresh, others looked old. I don't know why, but that's the part that stuck in my head the most. Later, at home, I overheard my mom talking on the phone. She said police told the school they'd found footprints in the dirt, near the dumpsters, and a torn piece of jacket fabric on the fence. She didn't tell me more, but I could tell she didn't want me walking to school anymore. For the next week, I kept thinking about that man's face, pale, unshaven, staring at us like we were animals in a cage, and the way he wrote those words so big, like he was sure someone would listen. It's weird, but I started noticing little things at school after that. Like when I was walking to the bus, I'd glance at the fence near the lot and swear I saw a shadow moving behind it. Or how sometimes the music room blinds would be half open in the morning, even though Mr. Hadley swore he always left them closed. One Friday, about a month after, the janitor was cleaning the outside of the music room windows. I was walking by and I heard him mutter something. I asked him what he said, and he just looked at me and said, "You kids shouldn't sit so close to these windows." Then he walked off without explaining. I don't know if they ever caught the guy. The school stopped talking about it. They called it an isolated incident in the newsletter, which just made it sound worse. Every time I go back to that building, I still look at that little window. I half expect to see that same pale face crouched there again,